Land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge and thank the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples for allowing us to live, work, and play on their unceded territories. We also want to give thanks to the ancestors, supernatural ones, and hereditary leaders for looking after the rich resources of these lands and for passing along the cultural teachings within the beautiful lands we get to call home. We will be mindful to continue to respect and care for them as the ancestors have for so many years. We would like to start off with an overview of Chapter 13 of the book Strong Helpers Teachings by Cindy Baskin. An Indigenous worldview on the basis of child welfare takes into account what is best for the community, which includes children, families, and everyone surrounding the child. As part of the decolonization process, Indigenous communities are working on returning to the belief that it takes a village to raise a child. In doing this, social work will focus on the cultures, beliefs, and identities of the children and their families, all the while taking that mindset into consideration while offering resources and support. This chapter promotes a positive outcome of a family-oriented view on child welfare, rather than a child-oriented focus. Some key points on success when caring for families, caring for children. Resources and support of keeping children with their families and their communities. Supporting personal growth, healing, and empowerment. Talking circles with families, social workers, and elders to create solutions for family restoration. This helps take fault away from the parents, allowing their voices to be heard. It promotes clear communication and comfortable environments for the families. Social services to give credit for Indigenous worldviews on raising a child and supporting the family and community. Voicemail. You facilitate weekly night, afternoon hours parenting wellness groups, supporting local Indigenous community members who identify survivors of family violence, who at one time themselves may have been perpetrators of family violence. Your next group session begins in 10 minutes. While setting up the chairs, you hear the office phone ringing. By the time you pick up the call, it has already gone to voicemail. Moments later, you listen to the voicemail message. The message is from one of your clients who typically attends every session. The client says, hi, I won't be able to attend tonight's group because I'm feeling overwhelmed by life and stuff right now. I'm in a bit of a low place in my life right now, and I prefer to stay home. Having worked with this client for many years, you are aware of the history with self-harming and other harming behaviors. That said, you have also noticed that the client has not shown any signs of this behavior for many months now. You listen to the voicemail a second time. This time you can hear the client's 4-year-old child playing in the distance. Likely in the kitchen somewhere, not so near to the phone. You have concerns for the safety and well-being of your client and their child. The first step in this scenario would be to call the person back. If your client doesn't answer the phone, then the message you leave on your answer machine is very important. You sincerely express your concern for her well-being of your client. You must be very clear and genuine with your client and let her know that you really care about her as a person and that there are many support options for her, and emphasize that she is not alone. that you are there for her, and that she is loved. Remember that every social worker has an emergency contact number. If she doesn't call you back within a reasonable time, then use that emergency contact number. You must reiterate the same message to the person of that contact number. So when speaking to your client, the social worker genuinely cares for her and will do everything within her power to support her. Remember, people with anxiety and under stress are always hesitant at first to reach out for help. Remember, your client called you to let you know she was not able to make it in. This is a form of reaching out for help. She values and trusts you. Otherwise, she would not have called you to begin with. The main thing you should not do is make any conclusions of your own. If you make a hasty conclusion that there has been self-harm involved, and you call emergency services, such as police or ambulance, then the outcome may be drastically different. By doing so, you could diminish that trust you and your client have worked so hard to build. Once again, remember, she did call you because she has built that trust. This scenario should also involve the elders of our community. When you do contact her, arrange for one of our community elders to reach out to her for the crucial mental and spiritual support that will help guide her in her much-needed healing. On a final note, we have learned and are fully aware of the healing effects of the incredibly important words of our elders and the weight they hold within their communities. Social workers must have access to Indigenous elders within their communities they are working in. Too often, our Indigenous children are separated from their families based on social workers and authorities coming to their own conclusions that negatively affect Indigenous families. Our world and our loved ones within it need a world built on trust and respect towards one another, especially trust. So we ask, why are Indigenous children overrepresented in Canada's foster care system? In the YouTube video, Why Indigenous Children Are Overrepresented in Canada's Foster Care System, Kyle Edwards talks about this. Firstly, he gives a quick overview about colonial rule and residential schools and their effect on Indigenous children. Secondly, he talks about how most of the Indigenous children who end up in the child welfare system often go to non-Indigenous caregivers. Therefore, many Indigenous children grow up without knowing their cultural language, cultural traditions, or cultural beliefs, which ends up having the same effect as to what the residential schools had on Indigenous children. Poverty and poor housing are the commonplace reasons why so many Indigenous children are placed in foster care. The YouTube video, Raising the Spirit, Cultural Connections, Plans for Aboriginal Children, discusses the cultural connections of the Aboriginal children when adopting an Indigenous child that is in foster care. It also tells the importance of a person in a family where he or she plays a special role in supporting their community. Legacy of disconnection has caused children to lose their sense of belonging to their family and community when they are taken into care. The government of Alberta introduced the Cultural Connections Plan to protect Indigenous children's right to access their culture and spirituality. Helping First Nation, Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework. In this video, Jean-Yves Duclos, Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, emphasizes on the importance of high-quality preschool and daycare services for children, which help them to lead a successful life. Therefore, it is very important for every Canadian and Indigenous child to have equal right to it. The Government of Canada has committed to fund $1.7 billion over 10 years to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Nation to address their needs of their communities and towards early learning and childcare. Positive Anishinaabe parenting. In this video, Lorraine Boubard, who worked as a family enhancement worker at the Sag King Child and Family Services, discusses the importance of traditional parental teaching through her workshop called Positive Anishinaabe Parenting. She conducts this work for young parents to help them raise their children with traditional values, which would help to keep families together and prevent them from sending their children to care. This video can be related to our practice scenario. The setup of the workshop is similar to that of the parental wellness group session. When one of the regular clients does not show up for the session, the family enhancement worker or the concerned social worker tries to reach out to the client. The elders of the community also participate in the workshop. Therefore, they can reach out to the client and guide them as well. A sacred circle. Family group conferencing. In this video, Gail Desmilis questions the system. As if the government cares and spends a lot of time towards the development of Indigenous communities, why can't we see the results? She addresses the issue of the way the government or the social worker engages with the concerned families. Family group conferencing is similar to the practice of forming a sacred circle where they discuss the problem and produce the outcome that is best for the children. These teachings are derived from the traditional Indigenous values of trust, respect, courage, love, and dignity. Care is not an option. This video discusses the importance of traditional approach when supporting the mother and her child at the time of crisis. Dorothy Mountain, who is a mother of 4 children, struggled with addiction in her past. Several social workers were appointed to help Dorothy, but she never trusted them and viewed them as child welfare and agents of the government. Dorothy's situation is similar to the practice scenario where the client had a history of self-harming and other harming behaviors. Another case discussed in this video was about a young teenage mother, Chanel, whose own safety was at risk, and there was a possibility of government intervention for the care of her baby Charlie. Both these situations resonates with our practice scenario. Both the mother had a fear of their child ending up in care. Therefore, they were scared to ask for help. For social workers, it is very important to build trust with their client, so that their client can feel comfortable when sharing their problems. They should always take help from elders of the community because they are much more experienced and can provide better guidance. There is an organization called the Spirit of the Children's Society. Spirit of the Children's Society is an Indigenous-run, nonprofit organization that offers many programs and support services to Indigenous individuals and families, aiming to help heal, restore, and replenish their quality of life. Their 4 main programs are aimed towards children, young adults, families, and housing support. Their mission is to walk in love, honor and respect, to learn, share our identity, and heal together, and to make positive changes with a vision of family health, community well-being, and cultural prosperity. The foundation is rooted in 7 sacred teachings, consisting of Truth. To know of these things is to know of the truth. Honesty. To walk through life with integrity is to know honesty. Courage. To face life with courage is to know bravery. Respect. To honor all of creation is to have respect. Wisdom. To cherish knowledge is to know wisdom. Humility. To accept yourself as a sacred part of creation is to know humility. And love. To know love is to know peace. The spirit of the Children's Society recognizes the cycle of oppression within Indigenous history and aims to break that cycle by advocating and providing for the well-being of families. Not only do they create safe places and opportunities to thrive, but they also come alongside each child and adult with open hearts and hands and teach us sacred and important Indigenous teachings that uplift and bring their culture back to life. Another impactful organization is Representative for Children and Youth, RYC. The Representative for Children and Youth is located in Victoria, BC and Prince George, BC. Established in 2007, the RYC's purpose is to represent all British Columbia's children, youth, and their families in dealing with the child and youth welfare system. They are nonpartisan. They are an independent officer of the legislative, reporting directly to the Legislative Assembly. The RYC is not a government ministry. When we strengthen community life, we can begin to move family matters out of the courtroom and place the matters back into the capable hands of the community. The RYC has vision, goals, and values. Their vision: a province in which children and youth are healthy and safe, and their interests and viewpoints are heard and acted upon. Their goals: improve services to vulnerable children and youth. Children and youth are engaged in work of the office. The office is more reflective of Indigenous children and families served, and the office is working in an informed, effective, and integrated manner. Values: child youth centered, helping to achieve the best possible outcome for children and youth in BC. Indigenous rights: Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis people have inherited rights and responsibilities for the welfare and safety of their children, which includes a collective right to their culture and traditional territories and communities. The RYC also helps youth and adults from 19 to 24 years of age who are receiving services from Community Living BC and who have aged out of care. The role of the RYC is helping children, youth, and young adults understand their rights and gives guidance if those rights are being ignored. They connect children, youth, and young adults to services they need, such as mental health or addictions. They involve the child, youth, or young adult in discussions about the care and services they receive. The organization also guides adults' transition out of MCFD. Finally, the RYC conducts their own investigations and reviews on any critical injury or death that occurs while a child, youth, or young adult is in care. The RYC and our scenario. The RYC ties into our scenario as a resource for both the parent and the child. If there is a cause of concern for the parent's mental health, the RYC have resources that can help the parent as well as the child. This organization may be a resource to use to help the family in immediate mental health help. Because they are not ministry related, they have access to other resources that could bypass long waited lists that the parents may be put on. The RYC protects the children, but wants to see the family succeed. Indigenous worldviews guide approaches to helping interconnectedness. Indigenous teaching on interconnectedness is an important concept connecting our families, community, nation, and as Baskin emphasizes, to everything and everyone on Mother's Earth, to the everything in the spiritual world. The approach of interconnectedness is important for our well-being, spiritual, physical, emotional, and psychological, and teaches us that we all have a responsibility to each other's health and growth. In Baskin's own words, if a person is whole and balanced, then he or she is in a position to fulfill his or her individual responsibilities to the whole. If a person is not balanced, then he or she is sick and weak, physically, mentally, or both, and cannot fulfill his or her individual responsibilities. The answers are in the community. Why community first? In Chapter 8, it speaks on the behalf that the community should come first, and families and children should come second. This allows from a social aspect the views that we should put more notice on a community as a collective rather than individual. Baskin expresses, everyone is viewed as having the ability to participate in the well-being of the community. It is expected that each of us will put the community before our individual gain, and that we will take into account everyone's well-being in all that we do. From an ethical place. Learning, non-judgmental approach. In Chapter 6, it talks about the learning perspective of a social worker through ethical practices. One part that sticks out is the Aboriginal worldview of taking a non-judgmental approach to how we handle situations. Even though, as a social worker and provider user, there are some power dynamics, we begin to equalize those and begin to develop relationships with the families, their children, and their communities we work in. Baskin says, in terms of being non-judgmental, linking individual issues with structural causes or contributions, that behavior is learned and can be changed, and that there are many different paths a person can take. Interconnectedness teaches us the ideals that we are all one, connected through spirit and life, and as such, we have a responsibility to everyone and everything. If one of us is unbalanced, it affects the entire community. The teachings of interconnectedness highlights and reminds us that as a community, we are collectively responsible for our members.